When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king will answer him, saying, "Truly I say to you, as you did to one of these, my brothers, you did to me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me, naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will also answer, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison, and did not minister to you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. This is the word of the Lord.
All right, good morning, everybody. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this morning and this opportunity to gather, to worship you, to be encouraged by the gospel, the truth of what you have done to reconcile us to yourself. I pray that you would speak to us this morning, that you would use me to just speak your words, and that we would be transformed. Fill our hearts with love and compassion this morning. I pray this in your name. Amen. All right, so this is our last sermon on the parables. And funny enough, the parable that we're talking about today is not technically a parable, but we're counting it as one. So I want to start with just describing a few potential real-life scenarios, and then I want you to think with me about what the right thing to do is in these scenarios, okay? So scenario number one. I used to work in a call center at a local nonprofit. And one day, when I'm working at this call center, I get a call from someone that wants to make a sizable donation. And as we're talking, it comes up that this man was co-founder of a professional basketball team in the NBA, okay? And some of you probably know this, but I used to be all about basketball. This was like a big deal. So talking with the co-founder of an NBA team was like pretty sweet. And I'm not exaggerating, I don't think, but like the 30 seconds that we were talking about that were like, my job was super mentally demanding. So it wasn't actually, but those 30 seconds were like the best 30 seconds of the week. So anyways, we're talking, he tells me this guy's important, he has money and influence. So after chatting, I pull up his account, I'm going to process his donation. And only the account, it wasn't in his name. It wasn't in his name, it was in his wife's name. And I had no reason to doubt his identity. The truth is, as soon as he told me who he was and the fact that he had co-founded this NBA team, I Googled him and was reading up on him because I was so intrigued. And yet, it was true. So he's legit, but the policy of the nonprofit is I can't do anything. I can't talk to him about his account. I can't do anything until I talk to his wife. So I have this conundrum now. I have this man that is important and wants to give me a lot of money. Not me, but the company. But I'm not supposed to do anything, not even take the donation, until I speak with his wife. So I very apologetically explained the policy and said, hey, can you, any chance you can put your wife on the phone? And so I could speak with her. And he was not happy. But he begrudgingly put his wife on the phone. And she says, okay. And I take the donation. And then we hang up. And that's the end of the call. So later, I tell my boss this. And she's like, you know, Andrew, you can probably flex the rules a little bit if someone is going to give a large sum of money. And I was like, well, okay, I didn't know all my calls are recorded. I didn't want to get in trouble. But how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? Rules change based on the importance of the individual that you're speaking with, the amount of money they're going to give. How do you feel about that? All right, that's scenario number one. Think about that a little bit. Scenario number two. What would you say matters more? Okay, so I'm going to give you two options. I want you to think through which response matters more and why. So option number one. The way that you respond to your boss's insistent request that you work on your on your day off to help the team meet a goal, even though you already have a family activity planned. Okay? That's option number one. Option number two. The way that you respond to the young waiter who spills your water as he's placing your cup on the table, and then forgets to take the onions off your hamburger, and then takes 15 minutes to bring you your ranch dressing, and then, on top of it all, charges you the regular menu prices rather than the happy hour menu prices, and cannot figure out how to take off the extra charge until he goes and speaks with his manager and comes back. Ugh. We've all had something like that. Which of the scenarios matters more? How you respond to which of those two people? And once you've come to your conclusions, why does it matter more? Why does it matter more? So if you're at all like me, I'm guessing that your first impulse was to say that it really does make sense to flex some rules sometimes if someone's going to give a large amount of money. I get the logic there. And bosses are important. We probably should listen and be very careful with how we respond to bosses and waiters, whatever. Anyone else? Was that their first impulse, maybe? Anyone? Well, you guys are saints. Well, I think we think that way. At least I do. Even though I wish I didn't. Because I think that I should treat people that have power in positions of authority with respect. And people that don't have power, people that are not in positions of authority, it doesn't matter nearly as much. Okay, that's the honest reality of how my brain often works. The story from Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46, is going to challenge that narrative. So my hope is that through this story, our hearts would be just filled with compassion for those in need, and it would transform the way that we interact with other people, the way we value interactions, particularly with people in need. All right, so this story that Bethany read for us is part of a longer discourse, and it goes back to the beginning of chapter 24. So it starts like this. Jesus and his disciples, they're walking out of the temple in Jerusalem, okay? And as they walk out, the disciples are like, Jesus, this building is amazing. And if you have ever been to Israel, you know that even what's left of the temple is amazing, right? And at the time of Jesus, this building was, like, architecturally speaking, was ahead of its time. It was incredible, right? It's a big deal. But Jesus, relatively unimpressed, kind of offhand, is like, yeah, in not too long it's going to be destroyed. So, you know how we all have, like, a Debbie Downer friend? Like, every time like we have these awesome ideas, they just like inject realism and just like, Jesus was that friend sometimes. Anyways, it's a big deal. Like Jesus saying this is a big deal because the temple is the center of worship for the Jews. Right? It's the place where God is present. They didn't think that God was present in the same way that we do today. Like they didn't think he was everywhere in the same way we do today. This temple is not a church. There's no comparison to what the temple would be for us. Right? Every Israelite would have seen the temple as just super important and central to their identity. So to say that it's going to be destroyed is like really serious. The disciples are intrigued by this, what Jesus said, so they bite and they're like, tell us more, Jesus. What do you know about this temple being destroyed? And tell me a little bit about the end times. So Jesus then embarks on this complex discourse that spans from chapter 24 through 25. It's full of symbolic and literal language, and he's basically describing Armageddon, like the end times, and he's predicting the destruction of Jerusalem, which actually happened in 70 AD. And he ends this section with 4 parables, 4 stories. And these stories add detail about the end of times. Right? The first 2 stories are pretty similar. And they highlight the fact that when the end comes, they highlight the fact that no one knows when the end will come, right? No one knows. No one knows when the end times will come, not even Jesus. So, side note, don't waste time trying to figure out when the end times are or what the signs mean, because no one knows. It's a waste of time. Okay, don't waste your time with that. Those are the first 2 stories. The third story adds that we should steward our gifts and talents and resources as we await the return of Christ. And the fourth story is the story that we are going to talk about today. And it's going to add more details about the end. Okay? So that's the context. And before I dig into the story, I want to add one quick note. Parables and stories are kind of like snapshots. Okay? They're small, they're images of something. And they're taken from a particular angle, with particular lighting, and particular intention and purpose. They're not the final word that sums up all teaching on whatever it is they're talking about. Right? We learn an aspect, a part. We get a particular view of whatever it is that we're looking at. All right? So keep that in mind as we're walking through this story. So there are 3 scenes in our parable today. 3 scenes. The first one is Matthew 25, verses 31 through 33. It says, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will place the sheep on his right, but the goats on the left." So this story starts at some untold time in the future when this Son of Man returns in glory. He's accompanied by angels, and he sits on a throne. Okay? And because church people are fluent in Christianese, we all know when we hear Son of Man, Jesus, right? That's not necessarily what the disciples would have thought right away. That's not what is going through their mind. Their minds probably would have been taken back to a passage in Daniel. In the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, it says this: "I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed." So that this passage is a picture of the end times, and some angelic being that looks like a son of man comes, and God gives him authority over the whole world. Right? The whole world. That's probably what's triggering in the minds. That's the imagination behind Son of Man. So this Son of Man comes and he sits on a throne, and every nation in the world comes before him. And then he separates them like shepherds separate sheep from goats, which, obviously shepherds do that, right? We all knew that, right? Actually, I didn't know that at all. I had no idea. And when I did some research to figure out why they did that, I realized I'm not alone. The commentators have no idea why they do that. But thankfully it's not really important. Jesus' audience probably knew exactly why shepherds separated sheep and goats. There's some ideas thrown out there. But for us, what really matters is the fact that they did this. So as shepherds do, they're separating sheep and goats. Sheep to the right, goats to the left. So at this point, this is what we have. This is our image. All right, there's this powerful personality from the end times, surrounded by angels, sitting on a throne, and in front of this throne, every nation is present, and this individual is separating people, individual people, to the right, to the left. He's separating and categorizing. So what do we have here? What is this an image of? It's a textbook definition of the final judgment. The final judgment that every good Israelite knew was coming. All right, no doubt in their minds, this is what it looks like. God is going to judge everyone. And that's going to be a really good day for the Jews. Okay, they're excited about this day because it was the day that they would finally be vindicated. It was the day that God's people would finally be freed from oppression. Right? They had had a really long and difficult and painful history. They're this little tiny nation, this little small people group in a really big world. They literally, Israel, the nation of Israel is literally on a highway that is between 2 or 3 superpowers. And what that means is that it was a strategic piece of land that people wanted to control, which means that battles were often fought in their territory. They got beat up a ton. They got oppressed. They got annexed. And ultimately, they got exiled. And at this point in history, a new superpower has risen, Rome. And once again, God's people are being oppressed and abused by a pagan nation. Right? That's the story of Israel's history, just time and time and time again. But the Jews know that God is powerful, that their God is the powerful God, and he is going to judge everyone. And on that final day, on Judgment Day, what's going to happen is he's going to call everyone before him and judge them on the basis of how they treated Israel. Did you treat them well? Did you treat my people well? No, you're judged. So Judgment Day is a good day for Jews for 2 reasons. Okay, if you're a Jew, you're sitting here listening and you're like, this is good for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, it's the day that the whole world sees that your God is the powerful God and that you are proved to be on the right side. You're revealed as being on the right side. This is my people, God's going to say. These people are special and you messed with them. So in some sense, what they're expecting to feel would be somewhat like Secret Santa. You know that, what I'm talking about, right? So everyone is assign someone, give gifts, and on the last day, revelation of who it is. Always, whenever you play that game, there's this one person that goes out and buys high quality chocolate and expensive wine and gift cards to Grove and Gilmore Collection, all the best restaurants, and everyone else gets dollar store cards and 3rd tier chocolate. And I'm not talking Reese's or Snickers. It's Milky Ways and 3 Musketeers. And then you get a $5 Applebee gift card. Even with half off apps, that's not. But on reveal day, everyone is I really want to know who this special person is, because not even Santa himself gives gifts like this person. And that special someone feels very special. Right, so that's a miniature, very crass example of how Israel expected to feel on Judgment Day. They would be revealed to the world as being God's people, being on his side, being the good guys. So it's going to be a good day. On top of that, it was the start of the Son of Man's new kingdom, where he would rule the world forever with his people. God would be present again. There would be peace. There would be prosperity. It started on that day. So this is a good day. This is a really good day if you are a Jew. So the disciples are hearing this story, and that's what's going on in their mind. They're thinking forward to this, and they're like, okay, this is good stuff he's talking about. And they're probably really excited to hear what comes next, because they already know the gist of it. They have a pretty good idea, right? They know that the sheep are going to be vindicated. They're on God's side, and the goats are the bad guys, right? They know that the sheep are God's people, and they know that the goats are all of their enemies. So what they're probably excited to hear next is which of the enemies he's going to call out. Like, who is he going to attack? Is he going to go like historical, or is he going to go present day? Is he going to go national? Is he going to go international? Come on, tell me who are we hating on today? Is it going to be the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Arameans, the Philistines, the Romans? Is it going to be the Republicans or the Democrats? The socialists, the capitalists, the Anglicans, the Pentecostals? We're pretty good at that too, actually. Do you have a list in your mind of who God likes and dislikes? Anyways, they are chomping at the bit. They can't wait to figure out who it is. Who is Jesus going to say is the goat? I just realized goat also means greatest of all time. So that's the goats on the left. Who is that going to be? And that's what happens in scenes 2 and 3. So scenes 2 and 3 are the two sides of the same coin. What they do is just describe the Son of Man's, what he says to the sheep and the goats. So we're going to look at both scenes together, okay? First off, verse 34. Then the king will say to those on the right, the sheep, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." Pause. That is a really good start. That is like music to their ears. They're like, yes, keep it coming. Come, blessed ones, inherit the kingdom that God has been planning to give us literally forever. Let's keep going. Verse 35. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, Truly I say to you, as you did it for one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me. Okay, that's strange. It seems like we're missing something there. We're missing a reference to how the sheep are God's people, but we'll let it slip this time, because I'm sure in the next section it's going to clarify who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. So let's keep going. Verse 41. Then he will say to those on the left, Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Pause. Again, really good start. You know, like dirty, rotten enemies. You guys thought you were going to get away with it? Thought you could abuse me and oppress me? God's always watching. Keep going. Verse 42. For I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me, naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they also will answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, Truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So let me get this straight, Jesus. The basis of judgment, what separates the sheep from the goats, is treatment of the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the one with no clothes, the sick, the criminal in prison. In other words, judgment is based on how people respond to those in need. It's not based on ethnicity. Is that right, Jesus? Are you sure? So can you imagine how far their jaw dropped? My guess is that it probably dropped just about as far as the jaw of Christians that don't think that social justice is core to the gospel. This is revolutionary. This is meant to completely rock their world, shake them to the core. And it should do the same for us today. All right, so there are two key ways that I think it does this. First off, it challenged their ethnic identity. Right, so as I mentioned, the Jews thought that Judgment Day was going to be a great day for them because they were God's people. And they believed that based on legitimate realities. Okay, they're not making this up. They were God's people. God chose them. And he chose them to fulfill his purpose through them. He uniquely chose them out of every nation in the world, this tiny, little, insignificant nation. He did. And this went back around 2,000 years before Jesus. Okay, so there's a pretty long history. If you want more details, go ahead and read Genesis 12. However, God had not chosen them strictly for themselves. From the beginning, there was a missionary impulse. From the beginning, they were chosen to bless every family on the earth. And somewhere along that line, somehow, that was lost. So rather than spreading blessing, they tried to hoard it. And they expected that in the end, God would bless and vindicate them just because they were part of God's ethnic people. So by telling this story of how Judgment Day will go, Jesus is saying, no, your ethnic identity is not the key. Compassion is the key. If you are not the type of people that naturally overflow with compassion for those in need, then you're not God's people. And I think today, Jesus would have us think twice before we assume that we are the good guys. Before we think that we are on the right side based on some external sign. Whether it's our race, or our theology, or our political stance. External signs do not mark out anyone as sheep. Compassion does. All right, and the second way it challenged their world, and should challenge ours, is that it upset social structures. So ancient society was very highly socially stratified. And what I mean by that is the lines between social classes were super distinct. And it was vitally important to associate with the right people, to gain honor so that you could be recognized as important and move up in the world. People that were high on the social ladder were treated with great respect. They were important. They were valuable. People low on the social ladder did not matter. So in some ways, not much has changed. That's a lot like our society today. But I want to point something out about this story, okay? Notice that the king says to both the sheep and to the goats that whatever they did or did not do to those in need, they did or did not do to the king. And both parties are legitimately surprised because they never met the king. They never saw him. If they had come across the king, then they both would have jumped at serving him. There's no doubt in their mind. If they had found the king, they would have done anything to serve him. The difference between the sheep and the goats is that when they encountered someone in deep need, someone very low on the social ladder, someone that could give them nothing in return, that offered no benefit to them, someone that could actually damage their reputation, the sheep willingly gave what was needed. The goats did not. And what this is getting at is it's a heart posture. Okay, it's not a resume. It's not a resume of social service. The question is not how much do you help those in need, or how many service projects have you been on, or how often do you give to beggars or volunteer at nonprofits. Okay, that's not the question. That's not what it's getting after. It's getting after where your heart is. Are you filled with compassion for those in need? A compassion that compels you to action? Or do you serve others when it benefits you? And as I was thinking through this part of the passage and of the sermon, I kind of feel that in a church like ours that focuses a good amount on adoption, on foster care, on things like caring for our neighborhood, like backpack drives and coat drives and sleeping bag drives and things like that. When we really are reaching out, trying to help people that are suffering from homelessness and things like that, that we will tend to think, we got this. Like, we are enlightened. We know what we know. Jesus, you're speaking our language here. Like, this is who we are. We are compassionate, right? Because we already place a good deal of emphasis on this. But I want to pause there. Okay, I want to pause there because it's very easy for us to make this another external sign that's just like ethnicity was in the first century. So we can look at the presence of acts of compassion as proof that we're in the right. But the second that we do that, the second we look at our acts of compassion as proof, as justification, as soon as we do that, we actually cease from helping those in need, and we start serving ourselves. So we can use our service, we can use the good things that we do in the wrong way. And the step is not very far. It's not a leap. We have to constantly check our hearts. When you see someone in need, where does your heart go? Does it go to anger because of their irresponsibility? They got themselves in this mess. Does it go to frustration because now you feel like you have a duty to help them, but you're busy? Or does it go to compassion because another human being created in the image of God is suffering and in need? Maybe because of their own sin. Maybe because they screwed up. Does your heart go to compassion? So do you, like me often, strategize your service in such a way that it benefits you? Are you quick to serve someone when someone else is watching? Are you quick to judge those that do not serve those in need? Do you dive back into service so those that are not serving those in need will see you serving those in need and then feel guilty? see how wrong they are. Where is your heart? Where is your heart in this? It's very easy for us to be the type of people that are all about social justice or serving those in need and have it be the wrong thing, actually. Because we're really just serving ourselves. So I want to close thinking through a question that we probably all thought, I'm imagining. Why did Jesus have to repeat essentially the same exact list 4 times? Did anyone else think that as we were reading through? Like, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. 4 times. Why? He could have easily abbreviated the story. He could have saved breath and ink, not just his, mine as well. He could have shortened 2,000 years of sermons on this passage. Think about that. That's like close to malpractice. Didn't we get it the first time? Maybe we didn't get it the first time, actually. Maybe he repeats the same list 4 times because of how important it is. Maybe he repeats the same list 4 times because you can't just say that you prayed a prayer or that you have personal faith or that you're a Christian because you grew up that way. Maybe he repeated the same list 4 times because compassion is that important. You can't claim to be on Jesus' side if you are not compassionate. So consider this. The next thing in the Gospel of Matthew, okay, right after this story, the next thing that Jesus says is the Son of Man will be handed over and crucified. Okay, that's next. This is the last teaching before Jesus makes his way to the cross. That's not an accident. That's not an accident. That is on purpose. Jesus calls his followers to be filled with compassion for those in need because he is filled with compassion for those who are in need. He says that how we treat the needy, not the privileged, has eternal significance because how we treat the needy, it cuts against the grain. Compassion is a return to true humanity. Not humanity tainted by self-interest. Jesus emphasizes compassion because he knows our hearts really well. He knows where we will go with this. We'll make a list and check it off. We'll help people that can help us. We'll prioritize. So Jesus teaches us by example. He tells this story and then he goes to the cross for people in need. And he says, follow my example. Do what I just did. He didn't just give a cup of water, he gave his life. But even more importantly, more important than the example Jesus gives, he's telling us something very powerful about who we are and our need. He went to the cross to help who? The needy. To help people that recognized, I have no food, I have no water, I'm sick, I'm in prison, I'm naked because I have no clothes. I'm a stranger. I'm poor, I'm needy. He went to the cross to serve those people. To serve the people that recognize that without him, they are lost. That without that cup of water, they have no hope. He went to the cross to serve people that recognize that their own sin is a barrier between them and God. that they can never do enough good to get back to God. Jesus went to the cross to tell us that we are needy, both physically and spiritually. And he went to the cross in our place so that we can have hope and we can have life. So he sets the example, and he also empowers us to do this. Because it's only when we have this power, when we recognize that we are needy, that we're no better than that person in need, that we're on the same playing field, it's level. Only then can we actually enter in and show true compassion that's free from self-interest. So in order to be compassionate like Jesus, we have to recognize first that we are needy. And then we need to pray that God would fill our hearts with compassion every day. So let's start that right now. Lord, I pray that you would take us off our high horse and help us see how needy we are. I pray that you would help us to recognize that we are lost without you, that we are no better than anyone. And I pray that that recognition would help us, that would fill our hearts with love and compassion for everyone else, but particularly those in need. I pray that you would fill us with your Spirit every day, that we would be moved to serve, to follow the example of Jesus through the power of your Spirit. I pray this in your name. Amen.